In the TC Dojo this morning, we have Pam Estes Brewer here to talk about productivity and professional skill development. These topics take 3 out of 5 of the top slots in the voting this year, and we're glad she's here to share one of the top techniques for finding ways to improve your productivity here with all of us. Pam Estes Brewer is an associate professor at Mercer University and the director of their Master's in Technical Communication Management program. She's a scholastic research reviewer for several journals, and we are especially grateful she could come to the TC Dojo today to share her experience with all of us. Pam says you can ask questions as we go, so be sure to type them into the question window anytime you think of one. If you want to ask your question directly to Pam, just put that in there and I'll unmute you when she reaches the next natural break.
Okay, thanks so much. I'm so glad to be here with y'all today. Talking about superstructures. As Liz was saying, I teach at Mercer University, and so over the years, when you're trying to communicate with students and with engineering students, they respond really well to algorithms and models. And so superstructures were something that I started using some time ago. And I'll give a shout out to Paul Anderson at Miami University because he was one of the first to start working with them. And thank you very much. There we go. There we go. So I did get a little carried away as we started with the whole dojo thing and the characters on these backgrounds. But we do know that email and regular routine communication can really eat up our resources. So here in the dojo, that becomes our gluttonous villain. So we are going to be anti-gluttonous villain with our superstructures. Okay, so I'm starting with just a couple of basic definitions here. Let me give you a moment to read this screen. So the idea behind a superstructure is that you can take a logic flow that guides your analysis or your organization for any communication deliverable. And with these logic flows, you can quickly and very effectively turn out a superior product. And yet it's still yours. So you are not doing a canned anything where you sound like everyone else. You're taking a very broad logic flow and then tailoring it so that it becomes your product, your output. And that can have to do with visual design, reports. What I've done here, and you can go ahead to that slide, thanks so much, Liz, is to pick 6 of the superstructures that I have found most useful. And believe me, I not only teach these, I use these day in and day out for my own work. So we're going to take a look at 6 of the basics. There are some others. And again, you're welcome to ask questions at any point. So we're going to start with the crap of design. And you'll notice that I really do like crap because I'm going to start with 2 of those. It's an acronym that appeals to students. So one of these days I can just file everything with a crap logic flow. Next slide. Okay, so for design and layout, I like to use an analytical superstructure, and I will credit Robin Williams, the designer, with this. She basically borrowed this from Gestalt theory, Gestalt psychological theory, but she's the one who tailored it into the CRAP memorability. I'll get it out there in just a minute. So she put it into the CRAP logic flow, and let me go through these and share with you the basics. If you use these 4 elements of design, you can turn out a decent design for the screen, for the page, for the whatever. You do not have to have a great deal of design aptitude. If you do, that's fabulous, but absolutely anyone can use this particular superstructure to turn out good design. So what contrast says is that nothing on a screen or a page is similar. So similarity is bad. I want my designs to my design elements to either be the same or very different so that my reader can immediately know that I'm sending a message with contrast. Repetition says that I want to repeat some design elements so that the whole looks like it is a sum of related parts. Alignment says nothing on my page floats around, nothing on my screen floats around. Everything aligns, preferably in a left or right manner, with everything else. So because we're in a 30-minute dojo, I can't go into a lot of examples of this, but I have plenty, and you can also look at Robin Williams. But a really good example of weak alignment would be centering or putting everything in the corners because you don't have a strong alignment with the other elements. If you look at this particular slide, I have 2 vertical lines that dominate the page, and that is highly desirable. I don't want 4 or 5 or 6 vertical alignments. And then finally, the rule of proximity says things that are related cognitively should be placed closer together, and things that are not related cognitively should be pushed further apart. So I can go through any design and check my contrast, my repetition, my alignment, and my proximity, and know that I have got a decent design, a functional design, and then I can begin to polish that further and further. So here's a second superstructure. This one has to do with a superstructure of analytics, of analysis. This becomes the ability to review your sources for credibility, oddly enough, has become particularly important. And so this complements a look at how do we navigate fake news? How do we look for the credibility in whatever we're using? And I think that as professionals, we're challenged with this more often than we may know, because if you're like I am, we pound through a tremendous amount of information every day. And so this superstructure can help you pause and consider credibility of sources before you use them in any fashion, pass them along in any way. So of course, I'm not sure how much I want to go into detail here, but you want to make sure that you check these 5 elements: currency, and not that a particular number of years is always right or wrong, but that whatever is being reported is current enough given the topic and the context. Relevance to whatever point that you seek to make, and that it doesn't take off on tangents. Authority. Whoever's talking about this should be talking about this. This person is an expert. This person is an authority, and that you can take a look at the facts of this person's background and know that they can indeed make whatever claims they're making. Accuracy runs hand in hand with authority. This idea that I cannot judge the accuracy of everything quickly. I am not an expert on everything. So I've got to have some benchmarks for how to make sure that things are accurate, some habits that work for me. And quite often, just a couple of clicks will take you far enough to be able to judge authority and accuracy. And then finally, that the purpose is clear, and let me just say appropriately biased. You've got to be careful with unknown bias. The idea that this person could be coming at the topic in a way that is not appropriate for the point you want to make as a professional. So this is a good source review superstructure.
We have a question.
Okay.
I might be over inferring, but it seems that superstructures are templates
Thanks for popping in with a question. I've worked with a lot of different names for this: superstructure, model for some of them, algorithms for some of them, and templates for some of them. But actually, I really like that question because they're not templates so much. If we look at the slide that Liz has us on right now, and I used this as a template, I would probably move through using subheadings or keywords from this particular superstructure: main point, explanation, and action. And I don't want to do that. That goes back to one of my opening slides where I said you can tailor these so that you're not producing a canned product. Canned products are not impressive, right? So what you've got here is maybe closer to a model or a superstructure that lets you tailor it in such a way that it appears to be you. So what I'm giving you there is the structure for the background, but it becomes all you on the surface. It's not recognizable as a template. Just like with Word, if we pull templates, you know, they're very recognizable. And maybe as I talk about this particular slide, that point will be made even a bit more clearly. And let me know if you've got any follow-up questions with it. So this is an organization superstructure, and it's what I call an oldie but a goodie because it's been around forever. But hey, you want to keep this marble on your plate. You don't want to lose the direct and the indirect for correspondence. And so with the direct, I'm going to state a few things that may be a bit obvious, but with the direct, you start with your main point, then you explain, and finally you end with whatever action or request is being made. And for westernized correspondence, we want to use this about 80%, excuse me, 99% of the time. You can tell I did that scientifically. But most of the time, this is the default for westernized writing. The indirect, however, essentially delays that main point, and it does it for a couple of reasons. The explanation comes before the main point, but the buffer changes because I might use the indirect because I'm communicating something that is emotionally negative to my reader. And psychologically speaking, if someone gets ticked off at the opening of a document or a piece of correspondence, they may not read any further. Just like if you were in an argument and you got angry, you are disinclined to listen much after that because you are just not happy. But there's another reason, and that's why, oh, let's go back to that one for just a minute, Liz. Thank you. But there's another reason that buffer is used, and that is for when you are writing correspondence among people or cultures who expect a bit more formality and a bit more relationship orientation. Then what happens is I open with a show perhaps of respect or a show of mutual interest in business. And only then do I move on to an explanation of the current facts and move into my main point. In westernized writing, we might only use this, I don't know, 2% of the time if I use my previous scientific statistics. But in other cultures, we might use the indirect 95% of the time. So, but in none of these cases, none of these would you state or label or put a subheading that says buffer, explanation, main point, anything like that. They should flow together smoothly. So that's where that differentiation between superstructure and template comes, I believe. And whenever you're ready, Liz. Thank you. Okay. Now this next one is a superstructure for putting together a purpose statement, particularly a purpose statement in complex contexts. And we call it AB23, and we use it heavily in engineering. And this is because many times when you are producing a communication, you're not just communicating, you are also sorting out complex problems yourself as you come up with the communication product. So this particular approach for articulating purpose is a real heavy hitter because it simplifies a very complex cognitive task. And then you can polish it so you sound like yourself once you're finished. But the idea here is I start with my problem statement, which is always the gap between what is and what should be. I then move into what I did about it or am doing about it, and then finally into the document's purpose. Now, this is not so much appropriate to, for example, a web page. Here we really are talking about more complex reports, and I'm sure most of you do recommendation and analytical and inspection reports, all different types. So, okay, let's move on to the next slide, and we're going to look a little closer at that AB part of the statement. And I'm going to give you just a minute to read down through this. So here's the AB part. If I start with the ideal versus the actual, I articulate a gap, and the gap is the problem. So I start with the ideal, however, here's the way things really are. This is where you could smooth that out so that you're not using a however statement every time, but you know, that's up to you. But an example of that is due to its high free point, biphenol must be heated to near its flash point before handling is possible. So in this case, there's one fact. Now here's the other fact. Even then, when the vapor pressure is low, it's combustible. So priming a pump is very, very difficult. So there's the fact about the substance and the fact about what we're trying to do with it. And we've got a problem because those two facts have a gap in between. And then let's move on one more slide, and we're going to look at the 2-3 now. So we did the AB, now we're going to do the 2-3. Okay, so I just repeated that AB up at the top. Next, I move on to what I or my team will do as a result of the problem. And that is, in this case, I said, okay, we researched 3 options for priming the pump under these conditions. And then finally, in this report, the feasibility of each option is analyzed and option B is recommended. So between that AB23, I have a complete purpose statement, and it is almost algorithmic, but it's a superstructure where I can flesh out that complex purpose statement. And interestingly enough, a lot of times documents are missing a clear purpose statement, which isn't good for your readers, and it's also not good for you if you don't know what it is. You know, if I or you as a communicator are still uncertain about, okay, what is that problem we're trying to address? Okay, so this is one of my all-time favorites, folks. This is a report superstructure, business report. There are all kinds of reports, analytical, instructional, research, proposals, more and more. But I have found that this particular 4-part superstructure works for virtually any business report. So the summary, right, comes first. Chances are I write it last. And my summary should contain the results of a good problem statement, a good purpose statement, as we talked about in that last superstructure. So it would plug in there. Then I move into my background, which is my context. Anything that my reader needs to know about the context of the particular problem we're addressing in this report. Then I move into my findings or my facts, and then finally into my recommendations, my predictions, my outcome. And you can see what you've really got here, which is sort of the beauty of it. It's almost classic in its simplicity, is I've got a summary and then I have past, present, future as it applies to this particular context. So again, this is not a template. I would not plug in here the words background or the words fact or the word facts. This would become a logic flow, and I would apply it to my particular situation. So for example, if I were to do maybe an inspection report, and I was going to inspect the building that I'm in right now, let's say that we've got some funds and we can update this facility. So I've been tasked for my team to take a look at the building and see what needs to happen to meet our needs. So the background, you actually could throw a subheading on there of background, but the idea there being that, you know, we have X amount of funds to update the facility. Representatives from team X, Y, and Z have been asked to evaluate the current state, you know, any of that background text. Then I would move into the facts, but I wouldn't call that facts. I would probably do something like maybe deficiencies, and then perhaps strengths of the structure. So something there that in one section reports any problems, and then in another section reports everything that is good currently. And then finally moving into the outcome, and I would probably call that something like recommendations, since I'm doing an inspection, perhaps for what needs to happen with the funds over the next year, but then maybe what we need 5 years out or 10 years out. And I can take that superstructure and apply it to business trips, inspections, progress reports. If you've got members of your team who report weekly or monthly on progress of products, this is an ideal organization, and it helps the team write more quickly, and it also helps those who are reading digest more quickly. So one of my favorites right here. And one more in our list of 6. I wanted to throw this one in there because a lot of you might be doing research in one way or another, and the MRAD is a cousin of the SBFO. You'll see with the introduction, methods and materials, results and discussion, that it's roughly there with summary, background, facts, outcome, but we get a little more specific when it comes to research, and this particular superstructure is so widely accepted in reporting research that honestly, if you are reporting primary research, you should never leave home without it. You know, this is the one you want to use. And in this one, you can actually take those parts of the logic flow and use them as subheadings. In many cases, that's desirable. So in the introduction, you do include that AB23 as well as anything else that's of importance in a given context. Then you go into how you conducted your research. Then in the results, you discuss what you found. Well, you present what you found. And then finally in the discussion, you discuss the importance of what you found. And you can move into recommendations after that and put a 5th part in there for the superstructure. Okay. So going back, I'll just say that for quality and efficiency, these are 6 of my favorite superstructures. There are others out there, for example, for proposal writing and so forth, but I think this gives you kind of a good basis because you've got design in there, you've got writing and organization, and there's one source evaluation. So it's kind of a nice menu there of superstructures. So I hope that this was helpful. I know that it's the basics, but certainly these are basics I use every day.
We have a question.
Okay.
Does this particular SBFO structure lend itself to the white papers, or to white papers, sorry, the correct structure of white papers being a near theological issue?
Hey, I may have to use that at some point. I haven't heard them referred to as near theological. Okay, that's a great question. And of course, you have to work within the context of your organizations. And I suspect that the theological nature of your white papers may be really contextually specific. But to back up, yes, it lends itself very well to white papers. The only element that's not explicit there for white papers is typically there is a sales twist on white papers, depending on how your organization uses them, and that would have to be incorporated into the SBFO. But I highly recommend it for white papers as well.
All right. This is our questions time. So if you haven't had a chance, this is the time to type your questions in. And while you do, I will tell you what's coming up next month. First, we've got the next TC General Mastermind meeting. It's coming up next week. This is a group where attendees present their specific challenges on topics they're dealing with every day in a confidential, supportive environment. These groups have been cited as being extremely valuable to attendees on a lot of news and organizational sort of publications. We have two going on right now. One is Everything TechCom, data topic-based writing, specifics of cross-references and graphics, and the others are product-focused on Arbor Text and Windchill. It is collaborative. Everyone lends their experience together, and it's been really amazing to participate in. You can sign up at the TC Dojo website. Next month, though, we're going to come back and we're going to talk about something that I've been talking a lot about with people. So it's actually me. That's why it's MD the Master. We're going to talk about how to identify data topic types, and this comes up a lot when people are working with legacy content or their first data project. How do I know which topic I should use? How do I make sure my whole team is using the same topic for the same kind of information? And I'm going to show you a couple of strategies, or one that we use frequently with our customers and with new people. How to identify topics like a ninja. How to make sure that you're using a reference or a concept or a topic or a task correctly, and everybody's doing it together. And that's going to be really fun. How do you sign up? You just go to tcdojo.org and you'll see that stuff at the bottom. All right, Max. So let me step back because someone asked for a question for this here. It's down here at the bottom. It's mastermind.tcdojo.org for that group. It's been really fun and kind of fascinating to do. We opened it up to the public from our customers about a year ago. All right, so we have some questions. Very exciting. Sorry I missed it. Can you define superstructure?
Sure. A superstructure is a logic flow or a logic underpinning that you can tailor in order to produce communication products.
Perfect.
I hope that makes sense.
It does. Any other resources besides the book?
Let me think about that here for a minute. I do love Robin Williams' design books. I can't say enough good about them. They are the basics, and they are just chock full of examples. And she has design books for both the page and the web. There are lots of different ones, so I can't say enough about that. In terms of the other superstructures, not so much. These are structures that I have been collecting over the years and then have tried, trial and error. If you have a suggestion for me on a way that I might publish them, and I don't mean a book, I mean a way to publish them so that they would be very accessible to you, I would be really interested in that. For example, you know, a blog in a format that you'd like to see them in, because I do work with them every day, and I'd be happy to pass that along.
I was going to say book. As soon as you said don't say book, I was going to say book and design patterns for communication products. That's a well-known pattern of itself for, like, in computer science. We see design patterns for all kinds of things. And we use them regularly to do stuff. So I will argue for the book. Anybody else? If you think of any other links, I put that link on the project site. So the same page you registered, I'll put any links there. And if she writes more articles about all this, I'll link to all of that from there too. But if you think of more references, Pam, let me know, and I'll make sure those get published and you guys can all get access to it. And if you join the mailing list, you'll get them there too. Never miss another session or any of that information, because we try to gather it all for you. It's part of our thing. All right. We have one compliment. Good, quick overview. Definitely food for thought.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Pam, for doing this. This was a great session. I see one more question. How do these structures work with accessibility? That's a good one.
Oh, that's a good question. Because these are not interface related, right? These have to do with the structure for building, and I'm thinking here as I'm answering your question. It's a very good one. I don't believe that any of these superstructures have to do with accessibility. However, could we use superstructures or a superstructure to aid in accessibility assessment? Yeah, that would be kind of, not kind of, that would be a good idea, because really that's what the superstructures are doing, is helping us to formulate responses to communication needs, right? And so I think that's fabulous. I don't think any of these 6 I gave you today do deal with accessibility either directly or indirectly, but a superstructure for accessibility, really good idea.
All right.
Maybe we need a blog where people can share their ideas for superstructures.
Well, they can always post comments on the site page. All right, we've got another one. Superstructures provide consistency and structure, which is good for people with cognitive issues. That was one of the questions from the crowd. Also, it says, and anything that helps someone with a disability almost always makes stuff better for people without.
That's just a fabulous point. So the consistency there, and you know, I did comment on that fact that the superstructures are an aid to both the communicator and to the reader, and so you've really just made it, I think, a very cogent point about that. The benefits, yeah.
Excellent. All right, I don't see any more questions, but that's a lot of food for thought for all of us, I think. And a great
I need
session.
to go think now, and yeah, I don't know if I have thinking on my agenda today.
Oh, here we got one too. With our rapidly aging population, vision issues for access is getting bigger.
Definitely. We're doing some testing now in our usability lab on low-cost vision simulation, and how some of these really low-cost goggle tools can be used in usability testing, and it's been pretty fascinating.
Cool. Well, we'll have to have you come back and talk about that after you have some conclusions. That'd be really interesting.
Sure.
All right. Thanks, everybody. And thank you, Pam. What a great session. I learned a lot, and I think everybody else did too. And thanks, everyone, for coming to the TC Dojo, where it's all about you, what you want to learn. Be sure to subscribe to the mailing list so you get a link to this session once the video is posted, as well as announcements for future sessions and the link to the survey so you can vote on what you want to learn. Every month we look at that list and we go out and find experts like Pam or like Elliot last month. So why should we tell you what to learn? You should tell us. As always, it's our pleasure to host, and thanks. If you just need any help or any other communications or have ideas, let us know. And we see a big thank you from the crowd, Pam.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure.
All right, we'll see you all next time.